we are all trying to just get through life, right? Like either whether if you have money, whether if you're broke, whether if you're privileged, if you're not privileged, we're all like on a path of self-discovery, right? Wouldn't you agree? Like we're all just trying to find ourselves. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those barriers that are in front of us can seem like very difficult to navigate. And that is usually where a coach comes in. They help you navigate those barriers that are in front of you. But sometimes there's barriers that are behind you, right? And they're like fucking anchors, and they're preventing you from moving forward. And that sometimes comes in the form of trauma, unresolved trauma, or maybe self-doubt. There's so many types of, and that can stem from other things that have happened maybe in your childhood. But anyways, they're like anchors, and they keep people from moving forward. Today, my special guest is Lauren McKay. She's an LPC, and we're going to talk about some of those barriers keeping you back so that maybe you can see that hope is achievable.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Lauren McKay, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. It's a blessing, and I thank you. And I hope that we can shed some light for others, because I know, like I was telling you earlier, I know that people are on this journey. Like on social media. I don't know if you're on social media, but like just because someone doesn't like your shit doesn't mean they're not watching your shit.
Right.
I have noticed this from some of my closest friends. They're like, oh yeah, I like that video. I'm like, you actually didn't like it. Just so we're clear.
There is the human nature of like curiosity, right? Like we hate so many different things, but we want to see the train wreck in front of us. That is why a lot of people follow certain places and then will get behind the like keyboard warrior thing. But once you're like in person, they're like, ooh, I didn't say that.
Yes. That is a difference between, I think sometimes people make that, they have that almost like a split, I wouldn't say personality, but like a mask that they wear online and one that they wear in person.
Totally. Yeah.
And then they have the one they don't show anybody, right? And we all know about that one too.
Yeah. Carl Jung would call that the persona and the shadow self and then the self. So, nice. Yeah.
So what do you think, how do you think past trauma often manifests as a barrier to self-discovery and the expression of one's authentic self?
Totally. So a lot of times with trauma, two people can experience the same thing, right? Like we can have two people that experience a car accident, right? That can be a traumatic experience for people. And one person can leave that traumatic event and just be completely unscathed, get into their next vehicle, drive off, and it does not bother them whatsoever. The other person can have that literally physically inside of their bones. There's a book, The Body Keeps the Score, which I'm sure people are familiar with, but our bodies hold on to the experiences that we've had, which is so wild. So that's why when somebody has experienced a traumatic event and they have a flashback, they feel like they're physically back in that space. Like there are times where people will have these experiences and they feel like they're 11 years old again from a traumatic experience that they had when they were 11, because it is physically inside of our bodies. The emotions come up. There's many different things that trigger this particular experience. And so therefore, when, let's say that like a door slams or something like that, that reminds them of dad slamming the door all of the time when they were a kid. And they get back into that frame of mind, they get back into that childlike state. And it's just a slamming of a door, which I don't know that there's anybody that is actually normal, but there's this piece of it where other people they may jump or something like that, but they won't have the same experience of a door slamming and then reverting to a childlike state. Mm-hmm.
I've had some of that same experience you had as I'm not sure if I told you, but I was a prior military. Mm-hmm. So like coming back to the States when I was fresh back from from being deployed, it was like a knee-jerk reaction, right? Somebody would drop a plate, or somebody would like backfire of a vehicle,
Yeah.
or something in the background, I would like immediately
Fireworks.
like go for my
Fireworks on
sidearm.
4th of July and New Year's Eve. Like,
Fireworks.
yeah.
I went into like, we're going into my trauma here, but it was like literally like when I came back that 4th of July, I never really even thought about it at all. But fireworks, I went to a big party and the fireworks were blazing, and I literally was just like jumping. I couldn't function.
Right.
And I'm like, how the fuck is this happening to
Yeah.
me? Like, I'm not the person that this happens to. I'm tougher than that. I'm stronger than that. This was a while back. But yes, like a knee-jerk reaction, I would go for my sidearm, and I was like, dude, you're not even caring.
Yeah.
So it would be, that happened for a while until I eventually started seeing people making those connect that network of help. There's so much out there, especially for veterans, to just kind of help. So
absolutely.
So you're saying that we have this, when we have that kind of trauma and we keep kind of like reverting back, that instance can somehow prevent us from like self-discovery?
Yeah.
Because help me get there. Like
absolutely. So like, I mean, if you're thinking about like that great example of like a plate falling on the floor, like that's going to a restaurant, that's being in your home, that's if you wanted to like go and be a chef and stuff like that, like these kinds of things are going to clang, these types of things are going to happen, right? Like these are just normal parts of our day. And so if we're constantly being held back by these triggers, then it's going to be really difficult for us to kind of put ourselves out there and do the things that we want to do.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So, that makes a lot of sense. So you will hold yourself back from doing things, or maybe trying things, or doing something that would be like what you like or what you enjoy, or something like that. It's almost like, right, like pressing the rewind button on like a movie, and it's just come back again. Now you're going to start over, and something happens, it comes back again, and you can't keep moving forward. Oh my gosh, that's great. I never really thought of it like that.
Yeah.
That you don't take some of those chances, or even connect with some people, or build certain relationships. You almost miss out on opportunities.
And I think that there's also this space of like self-blame, like there's like an anger and guilt and all of this towards ourselves of being like, why can't I just do this because everybody else can? And so there's becomes this like negative self-talk that we have with ourselves of like, why can't I be normal like everyone else? And especially because we're not talking about this with other people. We're not saying this to, like we're not talking to our family about any of this. Like, especially
if it has to do with the family, right?
Absolutely.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, and I have found, to go on a tangent, but like what I have found is that a lot of times when my Gen X and Gen Z and millennial clients will like confront their parents about something that they've experienced in childhood, there isn't this openness to like hear about that one thing. There is this response a lot of times from family members that are, well, you must have just had the worst childhood ever. I'm the worst parent ever. And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying here. We are saying that this one thing that we experienced wasn't great. And that could be surrounded by 10 other things that were amazing and were great. I'm not talking about my entire childhood. I'm talking about one aspect of it.
One aspect.
Yeah.
One
and it may not be a little aspect, but it could be.
So
supporting people through their trauma experiences is a huge passion for me. And so like, I think that is something, of course, like we've all experienced things and all of that. And so like, I would be hard pressed to say like, I'm just going through life like completely normal. But like, no, like I've also experienced different things too. And so like, that's also put me in that space where I'm not going to talk about my trauma experience with clients. That's not why they come to therapy. And at the same time, there are times where a client wants to know, like, do you even know what any of this is like? And it's like, yes, I do. I do
Do
know
you
what
think
this is
that
like.
makes a better therapist or counselor to have to go through it?
Maybe, but I think that having an authenticity is something that's really important. Because so one of my very first jobs out of grad school was when I was living in San Antonio out of grad school. I worked for a domestic violence agency, working with people that had fled domestic violence situations, were living in emergency shelters in and around San Antonio. And so that was something that was really important to me and to my clients. Was I would oftentimes have these clients that were very hesitant towards therapy, and that would be a question from them, would be like, all right, have you ever been married? Have you ever had children? Have you ever like sat in my seat and stuff like that? And I was like, I was a baby. I was like 26 years old. And so
it's a catch-22, man.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
A marriage counselor has to have been divorced, or when they are divorced, it's like, oh, well, you're divorced. It's like, okay, all right, man, come on.
Totally.
You never win.
And so it was one of those situations where you're like, I have to tread very lightly. I have to make sure that like people understand like why I'm passionate about this, even though maybe no, I haven't been in the same situation where I've had to live in an emergency shelter, right? Like, no, I haven't had that particular experience before. And there have been things that have been challenging in my life. I have had relationships that have been toxic. I have had relationships that have not been the best. And so, like, sure, like I've experienced that. And I don't think that somebody has to have gone through it to be able to support someone in it. Because I think it comes back to empathy and being able to sit in somebody's pain with them. Just because I know what it's like to lose my grandparents, I don't know what it's like if you've lost your grandparents, because it's different. I know what loss feels like. And so I can sit in somebody's loss with them.
Yeah.
Whatever that loss looks like.
Mm-hmm. I just lost my grandmother actually like last week when we buried her. And but you're absolutely right. I can tell that I am taking it differently than some of those other individuals that were attending the funeral as well, because it all depends on where we are in life and what we know about life and what we've been able to use our experiences and learn from them. Like I know where she is, right? I have like faith that she's in a better place now, and she's actually in the place where she wants to be now. And I feel that maybe if this isn't everybody, but I maybe feel like I miss her and I want her back. It's a little selfish of me. You know what I mean? Like I want her to be here, but I also wouldn't want her to be here in the condition that she was in, like suffering and pain and all that stuff. So I know that she's not in pain, although pain is a part of us and it's a part of our journey too, but it's just her time. So I'm very I'm at peace with her passing.
Totally.
And like you said, that's spot on. Like what I'm thinking is like people are in different places and they take the trauma differently.
Yeah. And even with grief too, there's this really great, I did a training a couple of years ago, I think. And there's this amazing training about connecting bond theory, which is that even when somebody passes, we can still have a bond with them and we can still have something where we communicate with them. We're not going to necessarily always hear them back, but we still are able. It just shifts the dynamic of the bond, right? Like we still have a bond with this person. We still have the ability to connect with them. And I just think that that's absolutely beautiful, of just giving the space to this. Like when we think about different culture and how they manage grief, like it looks very different for a lot of different places, but if we think about Indigenous America, like if we think about Native Americans and how they like handle different things, like that was something that was very common, was to still continue to have them be a part of your pack, like a part of you and a part of your, communication and all of that. And I think that that's wonderful. I think that that's really beautiful. And that's the thing about grief, and even with working with clients with grief, is like, it's about finding out what is going to what is going to be the biggest support for them, right? Like, because sometimes people do pass, and there is this sense of relief that they're not there to hurt us anymore, right? So there's also that of like, of sitting with that kind of space of, I feel relieved that this person is dead because now they can't hurt me. And sitting in that both and feels very interesting.
Yeah. Do you, through your connections with people, clients, and friends that go through trauma, do you have you seen, and if you have, can you describe how that barrier has or may have distort that person's sense of self, like leading them to believe that things about themselves aren't even true, right?
Totally. A lot of times our internal voice will become a part of like what our abusers have said to us. Like that becomes our internal voice. That's how we talk to ourselves. So if we've been in an abusive relationship, in an abusive marriage or what have you, and our partner is abusive and they've said, you're never going to amount to anything, and you hear that so many times, it becomes your belief system. And so then when you are out of this relationship and people are kind of saying that the sky's the limit, you're still kind of anchoring yourself down because
your sky is like down here in the fog, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Because of what that individual may have like traumatized you with. Okay, I understand. That makes sense. What about some other trauma instances that
clients often come to me about is different sexual assaults or sexual abuse that they've experienced. A lot of physical abuse, either by parents or by partners. Like that's pretty common.
Does that sexual abuse, does that add to somehow distort their sense of self, who they are? How does it do that?
Totally. I mean, it can definitely impact your ability to connect with other people and have attachment with other people because a part of you has been violated. A very vulnerable part of you has been violated. And it can impact further romantic relationships. Like that can absolutely be a space where, I mean, I've had clients that have said that, you know, they don't look forward to sex with their, you know, with their married partner. And that's hard, right? Because like that's something that we very much look forward to typically when we're getting married.
Relationship, usually.
It's an important part of a relationship. And so it can evolve in that space. It can evolve in feeling uncomfortable, like just talking to your girlfriends, or I don't know what Lucker talk sounds like, but like I know as my perspective from like having girlfriends, it can be one of those things where we really like, there's a wall that's like put up because I don't want to talk about those types of things. I don't want to be open about those types of things. We can also see people having more risky behaviors in that because they feel completely dissociated during sex. And so they're putting themselves out there for potential STIs and other dangerous things that can happen. Being more susceptible to like human trafficking and that.
I can see that can prevent somebody from like not even like wanting to go out with their own friends or not wanting to share any more experiences because they're kind of like locked into that memory or that trauma. How do you usually help people progress through that?
Sure. So one area that I help clients with trauma is, it's called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Interestingly,
right, so for the people in the cheap seats, what does that mean?
So essentially what we're doing is we're utilizing bilateral stimulation. We're engaging both sides of the brain while you're thinking about a memory that you've experienced in the past.
You mean like left and right hemisphere? Like that? Okay.
And so we've been doing bilateral stimulation, BLS. I'll probably call it BLS from here on out. But we've been doing BLS, I mean, since we were cave people. Like it's
Can we do an example?
Yeah, it's drumming on the table. It's doing a butterfly hug.
While you're talking about something, or while
while you're thinking about something. But we've been doing, walking is an example of bilateral stimulation because you're moving both of your feet. Having a ding in this ear and then a ding in this ear and then a ding in this ear and then a ding in this ear. That's another example of BLS. It's super interesting. So Francine Shapiro created EMDR back in the 80s because she was working with veterans that had returned from war. And she noticed that when somebody is moving their eyes like this, it replicates REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And so they would be talking about their experiences at war, and they became less and less and less emotional towards the experience. They didn't have physical sensations associated with it.
They did the exercises while they talked about it?
Mm-hmm.
So even like taking a walk with a friend and talking about it could help that movement possibly, or maybe like drumming while you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
How in the hell is that happening inside of us? That's amazing.
So if we think about what REM sleep is, if we've ever seen our dog like fall asleep and they're doing all of those really funny things with their body and stuff like that, and their eyes are going, boo.
Yeah.
So what's happening when we sleep is our eyes are going back and forth. And when we're doing REM sleep, that's when we're organizing our thoughts, and that's when we're organizing our day. That's when I think of it as like our brain has this like filing system, and it's putting everything where it's supposed to go during REM sleep.
And that's just a reaction from what's happening in there. Okay.
Yeah. So we're replicating that when somebody's completely awake. So we're reorganizing.
I just created a neural pathway, just FYI.
We're recreating a neural pathway so that the attachment to the physical sensation isn't there anymore. And so it just becomes a memory.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And the VA covers it.
I'm a drummer, usually not like a professional drummer, but I'm a drummer and like tapping. I wonder if that has helped me throughout my years, like unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really good. That's good advice. I love that. I love that connection because, if once we can get past our past trauma and using some of these methods, then we can get back to being our authentic self by taking those risks or meeting people or experiencing new experiences and replacing that old stuff with the new stuff. I love that. So like beyond the emotional impact, how might trauma physically manifest and hinder someone's ability to connect with their authentic self?
Like physical ways that trauma shows up in our bodies is, people having a panic attack.
Yes.
And so often, as we know, like our bodies do interesting things, but typically when we're having a panic attack, it can replicate what feels like a heart attack. And so
I just had a friend he went to the emergency room and he thought he was having a heart attack, but he was having a panic attack.
Right.
Probably some past trauma, and we both served together in Iraq.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
For me, the way that panic shows up in my body is I just will completely physically shake, like my whole body. Like it could be 115 degrees outside, and I am like freezing cold. Like that is how a panic attack will show up in my body. Weighted blankets are really great for that. And utilizing, grounding techniques and getting back inside of your body, because so often we're in our prefrontal cortex, we're not in our prefrontal cortex. We're in our fight or flight, which is our
hypothalamus.
Our reptilian brain. So everything's yes, no, everything's black, white. Everything is
survival mode.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, we go back to essentially like needing to look over our shoulders as if we're a cave person because maybe there's a Siberian tiger like behind me and I need to like.
I also went through that. That was exactly what I was looking for, right? That whole like, I got to sit here. I got to always watch the exit door. Right. I got to make sure that, everything is like where it's supposed to be so I'm not caught off guard. Right. Yeah. So that could
control. Gotta have
that
control.
Could really prevent you from being your just kind of natural self, which is just like to relax. If you're usually like a kind of calm, relaxed type of person, that could definitely keep you. I can see how that can keep you from maybe you always like sitting over there. Now you're not. You got to sit by the exits, right? And now you're kind of more worried about that. You're not really just being your natural self. Yeah. The anxiety thing.
Totally.
Oh my God. That's huge. I see that. I see that quite often in people.
I mean, and we can also see it with like
weighted blanket, you said? No?
Weighted blanket, yeah. And then I think something that we also see with like kids is kids will say, I have a stomach ache, because kids don't know how to say I'm anxious or I'm nervous or I'm worried. Right.
So we're always treating a stomach ache, and it's not really
right. So often we're treating a stomach ache, or we'll hear somebody say like, oh, my stomach hurts, my head hurts. The vagus nerve, it runs from our brainstem to our gut, and it's our parasympathetic nervous system. And so it's all involved in all of these emotions and experiences and the physical sensations. And so a lot of things that happen inside of our bodies are connected to that vagus nerve. And so we want to stimulate that vagus nerve. It's like when I do Orange Theory. Sponsor me. Just kidding. But I work out regularly, and part of that is lifting weights and stuff. And so I'm not going to wait until the powerlifting meet to do my PR, right? Like, I'm going to try to do my PR and then do that and replicate that at a powerlifting meet. I'm not going to go to a basketball game and shoot a free throw for the very first time. I'm going to go and I'm practicing. I'm practicing in all of these spaces. And so the same thing happens with our vagus nerve, is if we stimulate it on a regular basis, when we're having that panic attack, we can come back down a lot easier by using something that we are already familiar with, as opposed to just using it at the 60th hour, where it's like, fuck, there's so much that's going on. I need to go use those skills and tools that my therapist told me about. And it's like, no, I should be using these every day, because then my body's going to be more used to using it. I've also been seeing my therapist for 11 years, so.
The therapist has a therapist.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know what? The coach also has a coach. You know who you are. I used to be, this is why I love doing this. I want to get the word out, about people like us that are just out here trying to, we know the value that we bring to our industries.
Definitely.
But there's a lot of people that don't, or they may have some misconceptions about certain, I don't want to see a therapist. I don't want to bring that shit. Dude, it's not. Yeah, coaches, therapists, counselors, they all have a place in the world, and they all help you progress moving forward. You know how we know? Because we have our own therapists and coaches, and we're doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. Yeah. You're doing amazing?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a day-by-day process.
Yeah.
There's some days that are better than others.
You want to talk about it? No.
Not today.
I'm not a therapist. But it's all about laughing about it. At least you can laugh about it. Some people, they can't fucking even get past it, right? They're just crying in the corner, and they're just like, shit, my life is shit. And it's like, okay, you got to reach out to a network. There's people like us that are just waiting to accept you and just let's go on this journey together. So on that.
I'm not going to make you talk about your feelings every 5 seconds. I am going to be the person that's I want to see your wedding dress, that you picked out. I want to see, I want to know what your dog looks like. But I'm also going to call you out on certain things too. Because that is something that is important. That is something that we need.
Right. We're not here to just tell you what you want to hear. Yeah. You wanted us in your life for a reason, and there are some, we're going to challenge you.
Because it's about change. Clients come to me for change.
Change is hard.
And so I'm helping you, I'm supporting you to facilitate that change.
So in therapy, what are some effective strategies for helping trauma survivors to safely explore their past experiences and begin the process of reclaiming themselves?
Building rapport. We do
that too.
We don't do it right off the bat. It's not something that we jump into. It has to be, you have to create a space of connection and attachment first and foremost. That is something that is so important. I don't do EMDR work or trauma work or grief work with somebody in their first session. Like that is something that we build up to because felt safety is so important. There has to be a creation of space where you feel comfortable talking to this person. If a client fires me because they don't feel a connection, good.
Okay, so how can a therapist help a client differentiate between the false self and the authentic self that may be buried underneath?
So there's another theory that I really have done some more exploration into, which is called internal family systems. And so it's about connecting ourselves to this authentic self. And so just like if we were at work or if we were at home with our family, there's different like parts that people play, right? Like, so when I'm at home with my family, I play the Lauren part, my husband plays his part, my dog plays her part. And that's how, that system works. Interestingly, on the inside of us too, we have different parts. So we have that part that comes out when we're driving and somebody cuts us off, but that part doesn't reign true, right, for everything else. Our road rage part is not necessarily the part that we're showing up to church with or that I'm showing up to work with, right? And so all of these parts are protective of different areas. And so sometimes we can create these, not we necessarily, but there can be barriers that are created that prevent like road rage part or what's another part that I'm thinking of? Like self-conscious part or something from our true self. And so they do have access to that. They do have curiosity. They do have compassion. They do have calmness, all of these different things. But there is this protector part that is like, nope, nope, nope. I'm going to be, I have this mission and I need to do this because they are super, super protective of what we call our exiles. So these parts of us that have been really, really, really hurt. So our protectors come in to protect those parts of us. And so often we will say like, yeah, a part of me really wants to eat that entire chocolate cake, but another part of me knows I should probably just have a slice. We talk like this often. There's a lot of times people will come to me and say like, I just really dislike the way that my body looks. I really dislike this thing about my body. And so typically what I'll do is I'll ask like, well, how was food talked about when you were growing up? How were other people's bodies talked about in front of you? Because oftentimes there's not anybody that's going to say, hey, Lauren, you're fat. Not that fat is a 4-letter word. Fat is just a descriptor of whatever. But back in the 90s, being called fat was one of the worst things that you could be called. And so when we think back to the 90s and we think of heroin and early aughts and all of that, like we think of heroin chic as being the ideal, like being as fucking skinny as possible. That is what we were looking for. And so, and beyond that too, which is, it's interesting because we look at Marilyn Monroe, who was a traditional size 12 now, which is essentially a normal size person. But it's how did your mom talk about somebody that was in a larger body?
Oh, maybe your mom had like somewhat of a thinner frame, but the child sometimes doesn't always like come out the same way. So mom sees.
But this could also just be like somebody that's walking across and being like, ugh, why are they wearing that outfit? What your child brain hears is there is something wrong with the way that they are wearing that thing. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe that child is eating that much food. Because what happens with that is my concrete A plus B equals C brain, when I'm a child, shows me that that is wrong. So somebody eating that amount of food is wrong. This is what is right.
So that's the false self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The false self becomes the different stories that other people are saying about other people. And then what my concrete brain is telling me.
Okay. How do we differentiate, or how would you help someone differentiate the two stories just by digging into this.
Yeah, digging, asking questions. What was that like for you? And then also like
discovering those deletions, maybe.
And then also like challenging that. Like, how do you feel? Like, when you see Lizzo pop up, how do you feel about her body? Well, it's fine for her, but it's not okay for me, is oftentimes something that I'll hear. It's fine for that person, but it's not fine for my body. And
so even
typically
sometimes
looks the same.
just having someone like talk through those like uncovered deletions, it's like, wait a minute, I have been saying that whole time, but I don't believe that. Okay, so what are some signs? This is the biggest question I've got for you. What are some signs that someone struggles with authenticity might be rooted in past trauma? And what are some initial steps they can take before seeking professional help?
Okay. So I think this is what we're looking for ourselves, or this is what our friends are looking for us, or both?
I would say let's first work on us.
Like
what can we identify in ourselves that is preventing us from moving forward, finding ourselves?
I think that if we're constantly in a space where we are having challenges with opening up to different people, or we find ourselves having challenges with like vulnerability with people, especially like romantic relationships or even like our best friends, like holding back on some of the things that people would assumably talk to these people about, it's probably rooted in something.
Holding back from anything, right? If you have that instinct to hold back, that's the question you got to ask yourself. You always question yourself. I say, like, why don't I want to do that?
Yeah.
Why?
Or are you constantly like wanting to numb out in certain ways? Like, are you wanting to use substances to kind of numb out? Are you wanting to just like watch The Real Housewives? Like, are you, and going on like on TV binges? Are you saying no to like going out and having fun with your friends on a pretty consistent basis? If you're constantly kind of isolating yourself, that's a big sign, I think. If you're hearing your friends say like, hey, have you ever like talked to anybody about this?
Listen to the signs, maybe like your network.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're there to help you, right?
Yeah. And there's not a stigma associated. And I mean, there is, but I want there to be less of a stigma. And I think other therapists want there to be less of a stigma around somebody saying like, have you tried talking to somebody about this? Because the wonderful thing about a therapist is that they don't know any of those people. They don't know Sally. They don't know Tom. They don't know Ralph or anything like that. They don't know these people in your life. Mm-hmm. And they're just coming in and hearing your side of the story.
Yeah. What do you say now? What do you say to somebody who's you kind of can feel that they've been through trauma, they have unresolved trauma, but they don't want to see a therapist about it? I guess we can't control people, but what kind of like advice would you give to someone who asking for a friend?
Yeah. Maybe this is where we search out like a support group and see like what other survivors of trauma have experienced, because a support group isn't going to be therapy. It's not going to be facilitated by someone else. And sometimes just hearing what other people's experiences have been, there could be somebody in there who's never been to therapy and feels really, really great inside of themselves. And maybe therapy isn't for them.
So just maybe asking them to find a support group, or finding one for them. I don't know how far I would, where do you think is like the no-go zone?
I think oftentimes we'll see spaces like, I personally think of like Facebook, right? Like there is a Facebook group for probably any and everything, right? And so there's probably a support group related to the trauma that you're thinking about in your experience, or that you've been through. And it can be a space for you to talk about what is, or sometimes like it's just about observing, right? It's just seeing what other people had to say and what their experiences were.
So try maybe an online group,
Maybe.
Start there.
Yeah.
And then if you see that it kind of helps, maybe then work your way up to like a in person, if that helps.
If you've had challenges with like parents or loved ones that have had difficulty with substances, there's Al-Anon, there's adult children's of alcoholics. Like those are also great spaces to be in too, of like other people that have been in that situation. If you have issues with substance abuse, there's obviously the 12-step program, but there's also other recovery programs too. There's Dharma recovery, there's smart recovery, there's many different spaces. And I think that that's also an important place to go to where, hopefully it's a non-judgment place, right? Where you're just around other people and hearing their experiences too.
Hearing it, just getting comfortable, being comfortable around it. Because there's people that I've met that there are certain things they don't want to talk about, like certain people in their lives that they don't want to talk about that should naturally be talked about, right? Like there are things that we talk about normally, like our day-to-day, our life, our family, our parents, our siblings.
Connection.
Right. But if there's one of those that they never want to talk about, that could be a sign, right? That maybe there's some past trauma there.
Maybe. And I think at the end of the day, we talk about connection and attachment. But the most important thing in being a human is belonging. And so when we've experienced trauma and we don't know what other people have experienced, we can feel othered because we other ourselves if we're not talking about it or if we're not kind of exploring what support looks like. And then we don't feel like we belong. And belonging is such an important thing. And it's also something that certain places will, again, that's another podcast, but like where other people can also impact belonging. If we think of like cults or something like that,
That's a good transition to my next and final question, which is like, how do you differentiate between somebody who has past trauma, who doesn't want to get out and normalize and become social, and someone who is just not social?
I think it comes back down to intentions and desires, right? Like, what is your intention in your friendships and what is your desire from your friendships? If you are like, I want to have friends and I'm sitting on my couch every night and I'm not doing anything about it, I'm sorry to say, but it is very rare that somebody is just going to knock on your door and be like, let's be friends.
So if you want friendship or if you want those connections, but you're not doing anything. So I guess in essence, if the trauma is keeping you back from wanting or going out and getting those things that you want, then that could be a sign right there.
Totally.
But if you're like, I don't want to do it because people are dumb, that's probably not trauma. That's just like, people are dumb. I don't want to.
Just an asshole, and it's fine.
Oh, burn!
And we need assholes, so it's fine. But I have so often where clients, or I've even had people like in the my loved ones that have said like, man, I just really want to meet the man of my dreams, and I'm like, okay, he's not going to just knock on your door. Yeah. Like, you have to put yourself out there.
You're like, what about your husband? No.
It's the same thing with therapy. You are not signing an oath. Like, this is not a blood oath that we have to stay together for the rest
it's not a tattoo.
Of time. Like, this is something that if you're like, ooh, I got the ick right off, cool. Find someone else. Or ask that therapist to help you. Like, it is not going to hurt our feelings to help you and to support you to find somebody that is going to work for you. Whether it's a time commitment thing, whether it's a cost thing, what have you. Like, there are some therapists that accept insurance. There are some therapists that are completely private pay. And, you need to find the person that is going to, you don't want to have an ick with your therapist.
Right. Yeah. I have to tell this to my clients, my potential clients as well. Mm-hmm. Like, look, it's not about like doing it or not doing it. It's just about consistency. Mm-hmm. Change is consistent. If you need help, it doesn't fit, continue to try. Because if you stop, then that's not moving forward.
Yeah. And so I'll have clients that I've seen for 6 months, or I'll have clients that I've seen for 2 years that are like, man, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And it's the great opportunity at that space to say, okay, but let's look back to when you started to where you are now.
Yes. Our industries are very similar.
Yeah.
In that we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so often they're like, yeah, I'm not there anymore. And it's like,
yeah.
I know you're not there anymore.
You're like, you're like, I know, but you need to see that too. Look what you said in the beginning and look where you are. You have made some change. And,
absolutely.
And that's good. That's fine.
Yeah. You know how to do the work.
You know how to do it. Now you have the tools to get you there, at least some tools to start you off on that journey of self-discovery and authenticity.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you, Lauren, for being here on the show, The Coach Approach. I appreciate all of these. If I will put in the description about how to reach out to you and how to find you if people want to find very cool, very chill, but very professional Lauren McKay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.